Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and finding out that the prices of a packet of milk, a loaf of bread, and even airtime have doubled. Would you blame the supermarket? Maybe yes, maybe no. But the truth of the matter is, such a price hike would have been caused by two main forces that determine how the economy runs. These are the fiscal policy and the monetary policy. These two forces, they determine whether the economy expands or it shrinks, whether the businesses increase in terms of their production or they reduce their production, whether the job market thrives or the job market shrinks. So what are these two forces? Think of a fiscal policy as the size of the engine of the economy, and think of the monetary policy as those factors that determine how fast this engine of the economy runs. I will start with the fiscal policy. When you hear about fiscal policy, think about government spending and think about taxation. Those are the two tools that are inside the toolbox of fiscal policy. Taxation, this is ways and strategies that the government uses to levy taxes from its citizens. And citizens can either be individuals or businesses. Think about income tax. Income tax has two dimensions: the corporation taxes and the pay as you earn. Think about VAT, value added tax, excise tax, custom duty taxes. All these are methods that the government uses to collect revenue. There's also something called appropriation in aids, and these are fees and levies that are charged by the government when you use their services. For instance, if you want to get a new ID or to replace a lost ID, if you want to get a passport or to replace a lost passport, or if you want to access government hospital services, public schools, all those levies that the government collects are also a part of the taxation. So now, how does this affect you and me, or how the economy runs? When the government increases taxation, what that means is that the disposable income that is available for you and me and businesses decreases. Because if I'm paid 100,000 and the government has increased taxation, initially if I was being taxed 20,000, I'm now taxed 30,000. So my net salary reduces from 80,000 to 70,000. That means I can spend less. That means I cannot be able to invest more. The same thing for a business. If the corporation taxes increase, the money left with that business to invest goes down. So that's very important to understand. If the government decreases taxes, then the disposable income for both individuals and businesses also increases and gives them power to spend more, to invest more, and to consume more. The other tool that is inside the toolbox for fiscal policy is government spending. And government spends through doing the infrastructure like roads, water, and electricity. When the government is doing superhighways, the bypasses, the railways, the airports, the seaports, when it is connecting people with water, connecting people with electricity, doing dams, those are the infrastructural projects by the government. What that does is, when the government increases their projects or their spending, then it means there's more money that is circulating in the economy. Because you can imagine, if it is road, if the government is doing more roads, then it is consuming more cement, more ballast, more stones. People are employed to work there, so the employment goes up and the rate of economic activities also goes up. And therefore, it is a good thing. But when the government reduces their spending, everything scales down, because now the roads are not being done. If there's hardware where the government was buying cement, it is not buying sand, ballast, and people are not being employed to assist in the government activities, the road projects, and therefore the economy starts to scale down. Maybe the economy was heating up and therefore the government decides to reduce the rate of spending so that it can have the opposite effect. So there are two types of fiscal policies. Number one is expansionary fiscal policy. Expansionary fiscal policy is used by the government when the economy is in recession and it wants to thrive and to foster, to trigger the economy to come back to its senses, because by that time the operations, the economic activities have scaled down. So the government uses expansionary fiscal policy. Expansionary fiscal policy, how it works is that the government reduces taxes. And when the government reduces taxes, basically what it wants is for the disposable income to increase. That citizens now have more money, businesses have more money. Citizens more money to spend, to consume, and businesses more money to invest. And when individuals and citizens are buying more bread, buying more milk, buying more cars, buying more phones, the factories are producing more of that, and the past factories are demanding to employ more people, and these people are paying more taxes. So the economic activities are thriving. And if you are from a recession, now the economic activity starts to boom. At this time also, the government spending increases. The government is doing roads, is doing superhighways, bypasses, building schools, building hospitals, supplying drugs there, doing airports. And at this point, people are employed. And these people who are employed, they are paying taxes. And all of a sudden, the economy is able to come from a recession point of view to a stable position. Now, what is this other fiscal policy that the government can use? It is called contractionary fiscal policy. And contractionary fiscal policy is employed by the government during inflation times. When the inflation is very high, the prices of goods and services have skyrocketed and the economic engine is heating up. The government has to find a way of pouring water on that economic engine so that it can cool down. How does it do that? It has to apply brakes. How it does that and how it achieves that is that it increases taxes. It increases taxes. When you hear about a finance bill and people demonstrating and protesting, it is because the government wants to achieve a certain goal. And this is to increase taxes. Why? Because the government thinks or feels that there is excess liquidity, there is excess money supply in the economy, and people need to be taxed more so that they can be left with less income. And when they are left with less income, their purchasing power decreases. And when their purchasing power decreases, they are able to spend less, to consume less, and the prices of goods and services starts to come down. And that's how the government achieves that goal of reducing the economic temperatures by increasing taxes. And of course, when it increases taxes, it also gets more revenue, which is a good thing. And this more revenue will be used by the government during recession. It is during the recession that it will now use that money to fund projects. And so that now the economy can come from recession again to stabilize. But now, during contraction fiscal policy, the government increases taxes. And what else does it do? It reduces government spending. It doesn't want to do roads. It doesn't want to do schools, to do hospitals. Why? Because it feels that there's so much liquidity in the market. There's a lot of money supply in the market and in circulation. So it stays with the money that it has. And therefore, it tries to reduce the temperatures in the economy. Now, those are the two tools that the government uses and the two types of fiscal policy. Now, what are the roles of fiscal policy? Number one, economy stabilization. And as I have explained, during recession, the government uses these two tools, taxation and government spending. During recession, for the government to stabilize the economy, it reduces taxes and it increases government spending. so that when it reduces taxes, the amount of disposable income available for you and me increases. We are able to spend more, and therefore we are able to consume more and to support the production by the factories, by the manufacturers, and the economy starts to thrive. And the government is also spending more. During recession, how does the fiscal policy stabilize the economy? The way the fiscal policy stabilizes the economy during inflation is that the government increases taxes. And when taxes are increased, the disposable income that is available for you and me decreases. And when we have less income at our disposal, we spend less, we consume less. And therefore, the inflation, because inflation is persistent increase of prices of goods and services. Why? Because there is more demand. And where is that demand coming from? Because we have more money, we have more liquidity. So the government taxes us more so that it can reduce that demand, that money that we have. And also at that time, reduces the government spending. You see less roads being done, dams, bridges, bypasses, hospitals are not being built, schools are not being built, and the government tries to scale down. That is how the government stabilizes the economy. Number two, it uses the fiscal policy to redistribute income and therefore ensure that there is fairness in the economy and there is equality. How does government use fiscal policy to redistribute income? Number one is through progressive taxation regime. In Kenya, it is a secret I'm giving you. The higher you earn, the more you are taxed. If you earn anything between 0 to 24,000, it is tax-free. Anything above 24,000 and up to 32,000, it is taxed at 25%. And anything between that 2,000 to 500,000, it is taxed at 30%. The more you are earning, the more you are being taxed. And anything between 500,000 and 800,000, it is taxed at that 2.5%. Over and above 800,000, it is taxed at 35%. And that's how the government ensures that the more you earn, you are taxed more, so that this money can be used to support the most vulnerable in the society. And number two, how the government is able to redistribute income is by doing cash transfers. Cash transfers is when the government supports the needy in the society. They talk about the widows, talk about the orphans, talk about the elderly. They are given some income at the end of every month to support them, so that they at least they can be able to maintain and to have their basic needs catered for. Think about the issue of subsidies. During moments of economic crisis, the government does reduce prices of some goods and services. I remember about 2 years ago, there's a time the government had given a subsidy on fuel. And even today, the government has given a subsidy. The government has given a subsidy on the cost of fertilizer. And those are the ways that the government ensures that there is income redistribution, that it tries to create a balance between the rich and the poor. And of course, the other use of the fiscal policy is when the government provides public goods. Public goods, these are goods or areas where the private sector is not willing to invest. A private entrepreneur will not do a road, because if they do a road, they will not be able to charge for it. A private entrepreneur will not do a dam, because if they do a dam, they will not be able to charge people for that water, or a bridge. And therefore, it is the work of the government to invest in such projects. Street lighting, a private entrepreneur will not do street lighting in Nairobi, because they will not be able to charge every other person who is passing there. So it is the work of the government, and they do that through fiscal policy. When they are spending, it's part of the fiscal policy. They do roads, they do infrastructure. And finally, in terms of the fiscal policy, is to boost long-term productivity of the country. When the government is expanding infrastructure, roads, railways, It's a good thing because it's creating capacity for more production and for more investments to be done here in Kenya. When the government is spending on education, it is empowering its citizens to be more productive, to be more valuable, and therefore fiscal policy is being used to spur economic growth in future. When the government invests in healthcare, what it is doing, it is ensuring that the workforce remains healthy, and a healthy workforce is a productive workforce. So the long-term productivity in investing in technology, innovation, that's the work of the government, and it's a good thing, and it does that through fiscal policy. So fiscal policy is very important. Now, let's unpack the monetary policy. And when you hear about the monetary policy, think about the money supply, think about the interest rates, think about the inflation rates. And we cannot discuss that without discussing about the role of the Central Bank of Kenya. It is the one that does that. It reduces the money supply. And how does the Central Bank of Kenya reduce inflation? They do that by reducing the money supply. They reduce the money supply through open market operations. When there is inflation, they want to sell bonds. They want to sell treasury bills, so that when the Central Bank of Kenya sells treasury bonds, the citizens of Kenya are investing in those treasury bonds. And what they are doing, they are given pieces of paper in the name of treasury bonds and treasury bills, and they are giving the Central Bank of Kenya money. And therefore, that money that was available for spending is no longer available for spending, because these individuals, these citizens, these businesses have invested with the Central Bank of Kenya by buying bonds and by buying bills. That's how it operates during the time of inflation. Of course, during the time of recession, it is the other way around. The Central Bank of Kenya, it buys. This time around, it is not selling, but it is buying treasury bonds and treasury bills. And it is buying from the people who had invested in them. So by buying is that I had given you a bond and you had given me money. So I'm asking you to give me that bond paper, that bill paper, and I give you the money so that you can go spend. And that's now how the Central Bank of Kenya helps the government or the economy to come out of recession using the open market operations. Open market operations basically mean the buying and selling of treasury bonds and treasury bills. Number two is through cash reserve requirements. During the time of inflation, Central Bank of Kenya requires the bank to retain more money from the deposits that they are getting from their customers. If a certain bank has received 100,000 as deposit for the day, they are supposed to remit a certain amount of money to the central bank that is not available for lending. It can be 5%, it can be 10%. So it is increased during the time of inflation, because if this bank has collected 100,000 and it is required to remit 20,000 to the Central Bank of Kenya, then this bank is only able to access 80,000 for lending purposes. Remember, the way banks make money, they lend the money that you deposit with them, and they lend at a cost. So during the time of